EsDeeKid has blown up and went from underground to a superstar insanely quick. His unique style and mystique have definitely added to his rise to fame, but there's one key thing that acts as the backbone for all of his success: the crazy production behind his records. So today we're gonna make two 100% original EsDeeKid style beats from start to finish, going over all of the production techniques used in his signature dark, dystopian, and underground sound. And there's gonna be a ton of gems and unique techniques in this video that you can apply to your production, so sit back and get ready to go into the grimy, dark, and distorted world of EsDeeKid's production. EsDeeKid's production always brings you to this dark, hypnotizing world. And the way this is done is with the melodies. His melodies are always super repetitive, ear-grabbing, and all have this dark, tense sound to them, which is actually really easy to achieve, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But first, there's a few core elements that you want to keep in mind when making an EsDeeKid style melody. The first thing you need is dissonant and ambient synths. It has to have more of like this textural, dark ambience than like a very clear chord progression kind of sound. The second thing you need is some sort of ear-grabbing element. A catchy melody with something like a synth brass on 4 raws, a synth arps on prog, etc., etc. Third thing you need is repetitiveness. I feel like this is really important to get that like hypnotic, dark kind of sound that he has in his beats. And finally, you need silence in your melodies, which I'll explain more on later in the video a few different times. But anyways, the easiest way to get started with one of these melodies is with some dissonant and dark synth pads, similar to the ones on Louis V sandals. This sound is super easy to get. Let me show you inside the screen. Okay, so the go-to MIDI pattern that you want to use for these EsDeeKid type beats is just a minor chord. I'm using a piano just so you guys can hear the notes really clearly here. So if we're gonna do a C minor chord, you would go C, skip 2 notes right there, and then skip 3 notes right here, and you get this minor chord, right? So you get this, and then what you want to do is you want to copy this middle note down 1. So normally in a lot of trap stuff, you'll do something somewhat like this, right? Where it's alternating these 2 notes and it gives that dark vibe. With these type of beats, to really get that tense, dark sound, you want to put these on top of each other. So 2 notes that are like right on top of each other, and listen to how ugly it's going to sound in a good way. Right? And then if we move these up an octave so you can hear those as like the top notes, make the velocity louder. Right? Compared to if I delete that note. It adds that like ugliness. So just having something like that over and over, but on a synth sound is perfect. So I made that pattern using a crazy preset from Analog Console, which is the best analog lab bank that I've ever used. My boy Prod by Jack sent that over to me, and it is insane. It is really crazy how realistic these presets are compared to like using real analog synths. They sampled and did a ton of crazy presets on some of the most legendary synths that I can't even get my hands on. Take a listen to some of these presets. So the way they did this is, as you can see, there's a ton of different Analog Console banks. I haven't even installed all of them, honestly. But you can go right here to like the vintage folder, and you see like they have Jupiter 8s, Memory Moog, CS60, which is an insanely rare synth, Prophet 5s, all this stuff. And these presets all have all of these parameters that you can play with on your MIDI keyboard to make it kind of emulate like you're using a real analog synth. So like for example, on this one, I could be playing something, which already sounds great by the way, but I could mess with the glide while I'm playing it. The chorus. So you could record in a super simple synth idea like, right? But then you could later automate it like a delay in to go like. That's the reason that working with analog synths sounds so good. And I'll leave a link in the description to check that out. This is not sponsored, by the way. I was just genuinely really impressed with these presets. So shout out to Jack and Ellis, the Synth Palace team, for making those because they sound insane. Anyways, once I had that pattern down, it sounded cool already with that preset, but it felt a little bit empty. So I put one of my go-to effects that I use inside of my ToneFlex plugin, Reverse Delay. And with that, you get this for the main layer of the sample. I love that choppy reverse texture that ToneFlex added. I use that effect all the time. But anyways, once I had that, I wanted to build onto that tense sound that you get by layering those 2 notes on top of each other. Because again, songs like LV Sandals have that really dark, intense kind of sound. So I felt like just continuing to layer on that dissonant note, which is really bring that vibe to life. So I grabbed the Prophet V3 and I put down this super simple pattern. but it didn't sound edgy enough to me. If you listen to synths on songs like Rottweiler and Dirty, they have this noisy, dirty sound to the synths. So I wanted to sauce up the sound a bit on this to get a similar vibe, and I've learned a sound design cheat code recently that is perfect for this. So normally, whenever you use the mod wheel on a synth, it might be doing something kind of similar to this, right? Where it's like messing with the cutoff, but it has a certain sound to it. So recently, at least on the Prophet emulations, you can change it from an LFO to the noise. So what this does is it's gonna modulate stuff like the filter cutoff and all this, the frequency, which is like the pitch. It's gonna modulate all that with the noise oscillator. So instead of like following like a normal like sine wave kind of pattern that's kind of predictable, it just sounds like, I don't know exactly how it works, but it sounds weird and fucked up. So turn this switch all the way to noise, and then I just chose B. So we're just messing with the pitch of oscillator B right now. And then, so this is what our sound sounds like with no noise modulation. And then just watch when I add this in. Even just a little bit. That's it. That's more interesting. If you add a lot, it just makes it way dirtier. Somewhere around like that compared to this. Super fire. So I messed around with that for a bit, and you get this before and after. Next up, if you listen to songs like Four Raws and Omens, you can hear this super repetitive kind of melody playing. To get that kind of sound, that kind of pattern, you really only need like 3 or 4 notes repeating over and over again. So I did a similar kind of MIDI, but I chose a really weird, like trippy sounding preset from the analog console bank instead of a more dry sounding one like he used on Four Raws. But anyways, this is what that pattern sounds like. This was sounding fire, but I felt like everything so far was kind of like ambient, textural, trippy. You can't really tell what's going on with it. And I wanted something that stuck out a little bit, that really grabbed your ear, something a little bit more dry sounding. Kind of following the same idea of having that ear grabbing ARP on Prague.
I just left the show in Prague.
And originally I actually messed around trying to do ARP similar to that one, but it just kind of felt forced. So instead, to do something similar, having like an ear grabbing thing that grabs your ear when you hear it, I used that concept, but I did it in a bit of a different way. That sounds insane. And I've been abusing this technique recently. So let me hop in the screen and show you how to do it, because it is super fun. So this trick that I've been abusing is using the Minimoog synth from UAD. Originally, you get a sound like this is the preset that I have chosen, right? Sounds cool. Sounds like a harsh analog synth. To make this really ear grabbing, you want to do something called detuning the oscillator. We're actually going to automate this in. So it's not just as simple as like moving, right? This is the pitch of the oscillator right here. It's not just like moving it like that and then just playing all the notes like that. We're going to play one note. So you can see on my like little keyboard right here, I'm just going to hold one note, right? But then we're gonna move the pitch of one of the oscillators. So there's 3 oscillators. There's oscillator 1 right here, 2, and 3. The first one is playing the note, the C that I'm playing. But we're gonna pitch this up 8 semitones. You hear how now it sounds like I'm playing a chord. But then we're gonna record it in me playing it like this. Right, like moving that. You hear how like uneasy that sounds while it's like sliding down? Just, it grabs your ears every time that I do that trick. And as you can see right here, I have recorded in the automation. So we start high and then it goes down to where all of the notes are playing the same, and then it rises back up. Once I added that in with the other sounds, the main part of the loop was pretty much done. I kept the patterns super repetitive and simple because a lot of the reason why EsDeeKid's have this like hypnotizing, like put you in a trance kind of vibe is because of the repetition. Anyways, once I had all those sounds down, I bounced them all from MIDI into audio so that we can add in an essential part to his sound: silence. If you listen to LV Sandals, you can hear that at the end of every 2 bars, the melody cuts out completely, which gives it this really cool choppy kind of vibe. Also though, if you listen to songs like Omens, you can hear that the melody has this super choppy kind of sound. It's like almost before every synth note, it sounds like there's like a tiny silence that makes it feel like it's not quite smooth. I really like how a lot of his production uses this technique, so I wanted to put it into the melody. And I feel like this works really well on melodies that are just like this like cool ambient dark texture, because sometimes when you have an ambient sound that just like goes out forever and ever, it can just start to feel a little bit messy. And when you add in that silence, it kind of like anchors everything together. It like adds bounce back into that ambience instead of just like wet reverb sound going on forever. So anyways, to add this into the melody, I manually chopped the audio every 2 bars and then just dragged the audio a little bit to the left to create these tiny silences. And even though it's subtle, it adds a nice vibe to the melody. Take a listen to before and after. Sounding fire, and it's almost time to get into the drums. But before that, I wanted to add 2 little sounds to the breakdown section, just to give the loop a little bit more variety so that if someone was flipping this loop, they had some more sections to choose from. And the first sound I added to this breakdown was a super dissonant synth brass sound, similar to the one on Centuries. This sound instantly gives me that like dark cinematic kind of vibe, and I wanted to add that energy into our loop. So I grabbed this bright synth brass preset, which is actually from Logic's stock plugin ES2, and I put down a super simple pattern using that 2 dissonant notes stacked on top of each other trick again. I'm just spamming that on all these melody layers. And then to finish that section off, I layered that with a synth bass, and you get this. Once I had that done, the melody was 100% finished. So now it's time to get into the drums. And for this video, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'll be real, I am not the best at making these EsDeeKid type drums. I tried to make some myself, but I just wasn't liking how they were coming out. So I sent the loop into my Discord server, which is free to join, by the way. We have like over 30,000 people in there, and told everyone to flip it EsDeeKid style. And if I liked their flips, I would add them into the video. And my boy Samuel Bryan came through and did a bunch of fire flips of the loop. And he actually did a bunch of different beats. So instead of just showing you how to do one style of drums that EsDeeKid raps on, I'm gonna bring him on the video in a second to break down 2 different beats. One with that LV Sandal, Cali Man, kind of like 190 BPM EsDeeKid stuff. And the second one, which is my personal favorite, with that slower hard trap kind of sound, songs like 4 Raws, Omens, Phantom, etc. So let's dive right into that. For this first beat, which songs did you take inspiration from the most?
For these ones, 5 AM, Cali Man, LV Sandals, and Mist were the biggest musical inspirations for this sort of beat.
Is it hood trap? I don't even know what it's called. Is it like hood trap kind of bounce, or is it jerk?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of hood trap aesthetics and also like jerk sounds as well.
Whenever you got the loop, what is the first thing that you did to start this one off?
With the loop, mainly breaking it down into kind of 2 distinct sections, like a chorus section and a verse section. For example, with the melody, I took that kind of main part which has that synth lead, and so that's kind of the intro and the chorus of this beat. Kind of chopped it up a little bit. And then with the verse section, it's got less layers, which kind of allows for a little bit of arrangement variation. So I use this stem.
And then I noticed that you have like a silence at the end of every 2 bars. Why did you do that?
Having that pause has been something that I've noticed a lot with EsDeeKid's album Rebel, which kind of allow the space for ad-libs or extra vocal chants to be used. Phantom is a very big one that has that melodic break every 2 bars.
So once you had the loop chopped and how you wanted it, what's the first thing you did to start off the drums?
So the first thing with a lot of this kind of style is that prominence of what's called the clave rhythm in the snare pattern. And like playing around with the velocities as well to get that bounce. Also a thing as well, this rhythm, traditionally it was used in a lot of bossa nova sort of music. This is basically a modernized version of it with these sort of trap sounds being used for that rhythm instead.
Oh yeah, so what'd you do after that?
So then I just went to clap pattern. So nice and crispy, nice and punchy. Now, with these sort of beats, because they are at such a fast tempo, it's really important to use a very simplistic 808 pattern. Like LV Sandals, from its 2-bar phrase, only uses one 808, and that's right on the start of that phrase.
Okay.
But then you have stuff like Mist and Cali Man that have 2 808s. So I've kind of combined both. And then you've got the second hit, which is here. And then I've also got an open hat here. Just makes the 808 when it comes in really hit. Nice and simple. And then to eventually add more energy, I've added the stomp as well, which is quite typical for this sort of genre. To show how important that technique is, here's the before with just the 808. And then this is what it sounds like. So it just gives it that extra punch, that extra energy.
And I feel like layering stuff in general works well at the fast BPMs because there's only so much room for like notes in the MIDI pattern, because if you start adding rolls and all this crazy shit at these high BPMs, it just starts to sound like crackhead music. Sounds horrible. So if you keep it simple, but you just like kind of layer the sounds together, it sounds nice.
Absolutely. And then the final thing of this beat is the offbeat vocal chants. This is that kind of extra layer of rhythmic bounce. And even you can kind of see in the project file, I varied the velocity. And here's what all of those drums sounded like together.
We'll play that final beat at the end of this video and you guys can let me know which one you like better. But for now, let's go over his slower, hard trap style drums for this second beat. So you flip this loop a lot different. I mean, the BPM is 127 versus 195 on that last one. What were the kind of songs that you were referencing whenever you were cooking this one up?
So for this one, more of that sort of trap sort of style for EsDeeKid. So Four Roars, Century, Rottweiler, and Omens were definitely big inspirations for this beat. So for that hood trap sort of sound, Wraith 9 is like the go-to. And then for this sort of style, like Century, Omens, Capo was one of the main producers for that EsDeeKid trap sort of style.
Once you had the loop where you wanted it, what'd you start with on the drums for this one?
With this one of the kind of key foundations of this sort of style is utilizing that triplet grid. Kind of enables the beat to stand out from that traditional 1-step, 2-step pattern and allows for that kind of crazy experimentation with the rolls and the bounce. So I started off with this closed hat pattern. For the triplet hats in particular, Omens was the biggest reference for that sort of style. So yeah, mainly just focusing on that. Then I added the main snare. Then we add in the kick drum.
Yeah. Fire. So what was next after that?
Then it was open hats. The open hat, to kind of balance out that complexity, is just very simple. From there, it was then adding the vocal chants. Again, like the previous beat, it's on the off beats, so it gives it that additional bounce.
And I think one thing with that pattern, since it's so simple and like repetitive, it's nice to have something that's like very easy to predict, that's balancing it out and tying it together so it's not just complete mayhem.
Yeah, absolutely. From there, add in the fill snares. The key with this sort of style is to go absolutely crazy with the fill snares.
As a kid I was always a leader, achieve that shit then it come back cleaner, I clean, yeah. I'm the boy, I'm not.
Just adds that extra energy and also gives it a bit of tonal variation within the beat as well. To add some extra variation, I've also got this triangle that acts like the stomp in the last beat. So the thing about the 808 here, you want to match the kind of chaotic level that's in a lot of these kind of trap-centered songs by EsDeeKid. A key aspect is to use sliding or octave jumping 808s. And then add some little ear candy. Got a couple of sound effects. So one that plays at the very start of the beat, which is this one here. So just like a siren pretty much. And then finally another sound effect kind of at the drop or the chorus section, which is just like a little bleep.
Where did you get most of the drum sounds for these beats from?
If you want to have the most accurate sound selection to this sort of style, deconstructed kits are the way to go. Like, especially with like the 808s, the claps, the snares, hi-hats, all of that. For the first beat, in general, like jerk or hood trap sort of kits. And then for the second one, trap sort of kits as well.
Real quick, shout out to Samuel Bryan for actually coming on this video and give you guys some sauce. I'll put his Instagram down in the description and let me know in the comments if you guys like me bringing guests onto these kind of videos. But anyways, let's hear these final beats. All right, so that was beat one. Let's hear beat number two, and let me know in the comments which one you guys fuck with more.